I am a 28-year-old female. My husband, Mark, is 30. We had been married for 4 years. In those 4 years, I learned a lot about his family. I learned that his mother, Carol, saw me as an intruder. She never said it directly to my face. It was always in small, cutting remarks. It was in the way she looked at me when she thought I was not paying attention. It was in the stories she told about Mark's ex-girlfriends, praising them for qualities she claimed I lacked. Mark never stood up for me. He would always say I was being too sensitive. He would tell me that his mother meant well. He would ask me to just try a little harder, to be a little nicer, to let things go. For the sake of peace, I did. I smiled when Carol criticized my cooking. I laughed when she made a joke at my expense. I held my tongue when she redecorated our guest room without asking, changing it to her taste because she was the one who used it most often. I thought that if I was patient enough, if I was kind enough, she would eventually accept me. I thought that Mark would eventually see how much I was trying. I thought our life would one day be peaceful. I was wrong. The peace I craved was never going to come. Not on their terms. This Christmas Eve was the breaking point. It was the moment the veil was not just lifted, but torn to shreds. I had spent the past 2 days preparing for Christmas dinner. Mark's entire family was coming over. His mother, his sister Linda, her husband, and their 2 children. It was our turn to host, and I was determined to make it perfect. I went to 3 different grocery stores to find all the right ingredients. I bought a beautiful, expensive turkey. I baked 3 kinds of pies from scratch, using recipes passed down from my own grandmother. I spent a small fortune on fancy cheeses and crackers for appetizers. Our fridge was packed full. It was a testament to my effort, to my desire to create a warm and welcoming holiday for the family I had married into. I was in the living room putting the finishing touches on the Christmas tree when Mark walked in from the kitchen. He was holding something in his hand. It was a heavy metal padlock. I did not understand at first. I watched him as he walked back toward the kitchen. I followed him, a sense of confusion clouding my mind. He stopped in front of the refrigerator. With a deliberate, loud click, he snapped the padlock through the handles, securing the 2 doors together. He turned to look at me. His face was cold, devoid of the warmth I once loved. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. He dangled the key in front of my face for a moment before slipping it into his pocket. "This food is for my family," he said. His words were simple, direct, and they hit me with the force of a physical blow. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process what he had just said. "Your family? Mark, I bought all of that food. I cooked all of that food. Your family is coming here, to our house." "Exactly," he said, his voice firm. "My family. My mother and my sister. They are my family. This is for them." The implication was clear. It was a punch to the gut. After 4 years of marriage, of building a life together, of me trying so desperately to be a part of his world, he was telling me I was not family. I was an outsider. I was not entitled to the very food I had purchased and prepared. "You cannot be serious," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and rage. "You are locking me out of my own refrigerator?" "It is not your refrigerator." A sharp voice cut in. I turned to see Carol standing in the doorway to the kitchen. She must have come in while we were talking. She had a smug, triumphant look on her face. "This is my son's house. It is his refrigerator. And it is his money that pays for everything in it." That was a blatant lie. I had a job. A good job. I contributed just as much to our household finances as Mark did. In fact, my last paycheck had covered the entire cost of the Christmas groceries. I opened my mouth to say this, to defend myself, to scream at the injustice of it all. But Mark spoke first. "Just leave it, Sarah," he said, his tone dismissive. "Mom is right. Do not make a scene." Do not make a scene. That was his favorite line. It was his go-to phrase whenever I had a legitimate reason to be upset. It was a way to silence me, to make me feel like my emotions were an inconvenience. I looked from his cold, unfeeling face to his mother's victorious smile. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a chilling realization that I was completely and utterly alone in this marriage. I did not have the energy to fight. The shock had drained me of all my strength. I felt a deep, hollowing shame, as if I had done something wrong, even though I knew I had not. I turned without another word and walked back through the living room. I went up the stairs to our bedroom and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the festive lights of the Christmas tree downstairs mocking me with their cheerful glow. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend, Jessica. She answered on the second ring. "Merry Christmas Eve," she said, her voice bright and happy. The sound of her genuine joy made my own misery feel even sharper. I tried to speak, but a sob caught in my throat. "Sarah, what is wrong? Are you okay?" she asked, her tone shifting immediately to one of concern. I took a deep, shaky breath and told her everything. I told her about the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning. I told her about the padlock. I told her what Mark had said. "This food is only for my family." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Jessica finally spoke, her voice was filled with a cold fury I had never heard from her before. "He did what?" she asked. "He locked the fridge," I repeated, my voice flat. "His mom was here. She backed him up. They told me I am not family." "That man is not your husband, Sarah," Jessica said, her voice low and intense. "He is a monster, and his mother is a witch. You need to leave. You need to pack a bag and walk out that door right now." "I cannot," I whispered. "Where would I go? It is Christmas Eve. Everything is closed. Everyone is with their families." "You can come here," she said immediately. "My door is always open for you. You know that. We will make room. We will have a much better Christmas without those toxic people." I appreciated her offer more than words could say, but I was frozen. I was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of what had just happened. My home had been turned into a prison. My husband had become my jailer. Leaving felt like a monumental task, a mountain too high to climb. I need a minute to think," I said. "His sister and her family will be here soon. I do not know what I am supposed to do. How am I supposed to sit there and pretend everything is okay?" "You do not," Jessica said firmly. "You do not pretend. You do not let them get away with this. This is not just a mean comment, Sarah. This is a deliberate, cruel act of humiliation. This is abuse." She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and acting on it were two very different things. We talked for a few more minutes, her words a lifeline in the sea of my despair. She made me promise to call her back if I needed anything at all. After we hung up, I just sat there, staring at the wall. The festive sounds from downstairs, the music, the low murmur of Mark and Carol talking, felt like they were from another world. I did not know how long I sat there. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. The numbness was a strange sort of comfort, a shield against the pain. But then, a new sound cut through the haze. The sharp, clear ring of the doorbell. It was not the gentle chime I was used to. It was insistent, loud. I heard Mark's footsteps moving quickly toward the front door. I heard him call out, "They are early." He sounded annoyed. Linda and her family were not due for another hour. I stood up and walked quietly to the top of the stairs, peering down into the entryway below. I saw Mark swing the door open. He had a fake, welcoming smile plastered on his face, ready to greet his sister. But the smile froze. It faltered and then collapsed entirely. Standing on our doorstep were two people I recognized instantly, though I had only met them once before. It was Mark's boss, Mr. Henderson, and his wife. Mr. Henderson was the CEO of a major marketing firm, a powerful and influential man. Mark was always trying to impress him, always talking about the big promotion he was hoping to get. "Mr. Henderson," Mark stammered, his voice an octave higher than usual. "What a surprise. What are you doing here?" "Merry Christmas, Mark," Mr. Henderson said, his voice booming in the quiet house. The wife and I were in the neighborhood visiting her sister, and we thought we would drop off your Christmas bonus in person and wish you and your lovely wife a happy holiday. He held out an envelope. Mark's face was a mess of conflicting emotions. He was thrilled about the bonus, terrified by the unexpected visit, and acutely aware of the situation in the kitchen. His eyes darted from his boss to the kitchen door, a flicker of pure panic in their depths. "Please, come in," Mark said, stepping aside to let them enter. "This is such an honor. Sarah, come down here. Look who is here." He was trying to sound cheerful and excited, but I could hear the strain in his voice. He was desperate. I took a slow breath. An idea, cold and sharp, began to form in my mind. This was not the evening I had planned. But maybe, just maybe, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to show everyone exactly who my husband was. I smoothed down my sweater and started down the stairs. I put a polite, serene smile on my face. I decided in that moment that I would not be the hysterical, emotional wife he always accused me of being. I would be calm, I would be composed, and I would be his undoing. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw the scene unfold. Mark was practically vibrating with nervous energy. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson were looking around our living room, taking in the decorations. Carol had emerged from the kitchen, her face a mask of confusion and displeasure. She clearly did not know who these people were, but she could tell they were important by the way her son was fawning over them. "Sarah, my love," Mark said, his arm wrapping around my waist in a gesture that was meant to look affectionate, but felt like a vice. "You remember my boss, Mr. Henderson, and his wife, Mary?" "Of course," I said, my voice smooth as silk. I extended my hand. "It is so wonderful to see you both. What a lovely surprise. Please make yourselves at home." "The pleasure is all ours," Mrs. Henderson said, smiling warmly at me. "Your house looks so festive. You have done a beautiful job." "Thank you," I said. "I love decorating for the holidays." I glanced at Mark. His smile was so tight it looked painful. "Can I get you something to drink?" Mark asked, already starting to herd them toward the living room sofa. "A glass of wine? Some eggnog? We have a fridge full of refreshments." The moment he said the word fridge, his eyes widened slightly, as if he had just remembered the very large, very metallic problem attached to it. I saw his hand twitch toward the pocket where he had put the key. "Oh, some chilled water would be lovely if you have it," Mr. Henderson said, settling into an armchair. Of course," Mark said, his voice a little too loud. "One chilled water coming right up." He turned and walked toward the kitchen. I watched him go. Carol followed him, her expression suspicious. The Hendersons were chatting pleasantly about the weather, oblivious to the drama that was about to play out. I excused myself politely. "I will just go see if Mark needs a hand," I said, and followed them into the kitchen. I stopped just inside the doorway, hidden from the view of the living room. Mark was standing in front of the refrigerator, staring at the padlock as if it were a venomous snake. Carol was standing beside him. Her arms crossed over her chest. "What is going on?" she hissed, keeping her voice low. "Who are those people?" "That is my boss," Mark whispered back frantically. "The CEO of my company. This is a disaster. He asked for a drink. I need the key." "No," Carol said, her voice stubborn. "I told you, that food is for us. Not for her, and certainly not for your fancy boss." "Mother, are you insane?" Mark's voice was tight with panic. "This is my career. My promotion depends on this man liking me. He thinks I am a perfect family man. He cannot see this. Give me the key." "I do not have the key," she lied. Her eyes narrowed. "You put it in your pocket." "I gave it to you," he shot back. "I told you to hold on to it. I saw you put it in your purse." They were arguing in furious whispers. A venomous little dance of greed and stupidity. Mark was trying to pry the purse from her shoulder, and she was batting his hands away. It was pathetic. It was also my opening. I took a deep breath and stepped fully into the kitchen, a bright, helpful smile on my face. "Everything okay in here?" I asked cheerfully. They both froze, turning to look at me with wide, guilty eyes. "Mark, honey, what is taking so long?" I asked, my tone light and breezy. "Mr. Henderson is waiting for his water." Mark looked at the fridge, then back at me, his mind clearly racing for an excuse. The the handle is broken," he stammered. "It is stuck. We are waiting for a repairman." It was such a flimsy, ridiculous lie. I almost laughed. Instead, I decided to help him with it. "Oh, darling, do not be silly," I said, walking over to the refrigerator and touching the padlock. "The handle is not broken. You put the padlock on, remember?" I turned to give him a look of innocent confusion. "You were worried about the neighborhood kids trying to sneak some of our Christmas pies before the party. It was such a funny idea." I had given him an out. A thin, absurd out, but one that was better than "the handle is broken." It painted him as a quirky, overprotective homeowner, not a cruel husband. It also put him directly on the spot. He had to either agree with my ridiculous story or admit the truth. He stared at me, his jaw working. I could see the fury in his eyes, but he was trapped. Mr. Henderson could walk in at any moment. "Yes," he said through gritted teeth. "Yes, that is right. The kids. A little prank." "Well, the prank is over now. Honey," I said, patting his arm. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson are here. You can unlock it now." His eyes darted to his mother. She was clutching her purse to her chest like it contained state secrets. The standoff resumed, but now I was a part of it. I was no longer the victim hiding upstairs. I was a player in the game. "Mom," Mark said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Give me the key." Carol looked from her son's furious face to my calm, smiling one. She knew she was losing. Her little power trip was about to cost her son dearly. With a frustrated sigh, she finally opened her purse and fished out the key. She practically threw it at Mark. He fumbled with it for a second, his hands shaking with anger and relief. He jammed the key into the padlock and twisted. The lock sprang open with a loud click. He pulled it off the handles and shoved it into his pocket, his face flushed with a mixture of sweat and shame. He yanked the refrigerator door open and grabbed a bottle of water. He did not look at me. He did not look at his mother. He just stormed out of the kitchen to serve his boss, the perfect host once more. I was left in the kitchen with Carol. She was glaring at me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. "You think you are so clever," she snarled. "I have no idea what you are talking about," I said sweetly. "I was just helping my husband. Is that not what a good wife does?" Her face contorted with rage, but she could not say anything. The Hendersons were just a few feet away. Any outburst from her would only make things worse for Mark. She was silenced by the very social conventions she and her son tried to use against me. She spun on her heel and retreated to the far corner of the kitchen, fuming in silence. I felt a surge of something I had not felt in a very long time. It was power. It was control. It was the satisfying feeling of turning their own cruelty back on them. I walked back into the living room, my head held high. Mark was handing the water to Mr. Henderson, his hands still trembling slightly. "Thank you, my boy," Mr. Henderson said, taking a sip. "Ah, that hits the spot. So, Mary and I were just admiring your home. You two have built a wonderful life here." "We try," Mark said, forcing another smile. He shot a nervous glance at me as if expecting me to say something. I just smiled back placidly. The conversation continued. Mr. Henderson was a talker. He spoke about the market, about a recent successful campaign, and about his plans for the company in the new year. Mark hung on his every word, nodding eagerly, agreeing with everything. He was a master of sucking up. It was nauseating to watch. Carol lingered in the kitchen doorway, a thunderous expression on her face. She was like a gargoyle guarding a tomb. Mrs. Henderson, a kind and perceptive woman, seemed to notice the tension. Is everything all right, dear? She asked me quietly, while her husband was engrossed in a monologue about quarterly earnings. Everything is wonderful, I said, my voice betraying nothing. It is just the usual holiday stress. You know how it is, trying to get everything perfect for the family. Oh, I certainly do, she said with a knowing smile. My mother-in-law used to inspect my kitchen with a white glove every Thanksgiving. We shared a small, conspiratorial laugh. It was a moment of connection, a silent acknowledgement between two women who understood the complexities of navigating in-laws. In that moment, I felt less alone. I had an ally, even if she did not know the full story yet. The doorbell rang again. This time, I knew it was Linda and her family. Mark jumped up to get the door, his relief palpable. The more people there were, the more the tension could be diffused. He swung the door open to greet his sister with an overly enthusiastic hug. Linda, her husband Tom, and their two young children, a boy and a girl, spilled into the entryway. The kids were excited, chattering about Santa Claus and presents. For a few moments, the normal, happy chaos of a family Christmas gathering filled the house. It was a stark contrast to the cold drama that had been playing out just minutes before. When Linda saw Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, she looked surprised. Mark quickly made the introductions. Linda, Tom, this is my boss, Mr. Henderson, and his wife, Mary. They were kind enough to stop by. Linda was polite and friendly, shaking their hands. She was always more easygoing than her mother and brother. We were not close friends, but we had always been cordial. She had never been openly hostile to me like Carol. She was more of a passive observer, someone who went along with her family's dynamics without ever questioning them. With more people in the room, the atmosphere lightened. The kids were a welcome distraction. They ran to the Christmas tree, marveling at the lights and the presents underneath. Mrs. Henderson was enchanted by them, asking them what they had asked Santa for. Carol, however, seemed to see the arrival of her daughter as an opportunity to regain some ground. She came over and put her arm around Linda. "It is so good you are here," Carol said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was getting worried we would not have enough food for everyone. Sarah is so frugal with her shopping." The lie was so audacious, so public, that it took my breath away. I had spent hundreds of dollars. The fridge was bursting. I looked at the faces in the room. Mr. Henderson was still talking to Tom, but Mrs. Henderson had heard. Her polite smile tightened just a fraction. Linda looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Mark pretended he had not heard, busying himself by taking his niece's coat. This was her game. Public humiliation through backhanded compliments and outright lies. For years, I had let it slide. I had smiled and stayed silent. But not tonight. Tonight, the rules had changed. I laughed. It was a light musical sound. "Oh, Carol, you are such a kidder," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "Frugal? I think I bought half the grocery store. I was so excited for everyone to try my grandmother's recipes. In fact, why are we all standing around? Let me get the appetizers out. The fridge is absolutely packed." I did not wait for a response. I turned and walked purposefully into the kitchen. I could feel their eyes on my back. I opened the refrigerator door, the now unlocked door, and began to pull out the platters I had so carefully arranged that morning. A beautiful board of artisanal cheeses, a bowl of homemade spinach dip, a platter of shrimp cocktail. I carried them into the living room and set them on the coffee table. The spread was impressive. It was abundant. It was the complete opposite of frugal. "Wow, Sarah, this looks amazing," Linda said, her eyes wide. Her own mother's lie had just been exposed in the most delicious way possible. "Help yourselves," I said, gesturing to the food. "There is plenty more in the kitchen. I may have gone a little overboard." I smiled directly at Carol, a picture of gracious hospitality. Her face was pale with fury. She had tried to paint me as stingy, and I had just shown everyone that the opposite was true. She had been outplayed. Mr. Henderson turned his attention from his conversation with Tom. "My goodness, Mark," he said, picking up a piece of cheese. Your wife is not just a decorator, she is a gourmet chef. You are a very lucky man. Yes, sir. Mark mumbled, his face a blotchy red. I am. She is wonderful. He could barely get the words out. Every compliment paid to me was a blow to him and his mother. Their plan to isolate and humiliate me was backfiring spectacularly. Instead of looking like a gracious host and a devoted son, he was starting to look like an ungrateful husband. As everyone began to eat and chat, I felt a new sense of resolve hardening within me. The padlock had been a declaration of war. Carol's comment about me being frugal was another battle. I had won this round, but the war was far from over. This was not just about my feelings anymore. It was about the truth. It was about the lies that had defined my marriage for 4 years. And then I remembered Carol's other lie, the one she had told me in the kitchen. It is his money that pays for everything in it. The casual, dismissive way she had erased my contribution, my very existence as a financial partner in this marriage. A cold suspicion began to creep into my mind. The padlock, the cruelty, the specific timing on Christmas Eve. It felt like more than just a power play. It felt calculated. It felt like they were trying to hide something. What were they so afraid of me discovering? While the others were distracted by the food and the children, I slipped my phone out of my pocket. I kept my expression neutral, as if I were just checking a message. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened my banking app. We had a joint checking account where both of our paychecks were deposited. It was the account we used for all household expenses. It was the account from which I had withdrawn the cash for the Christmas groceries. I logged in. The balance displayed on the screen. It was lower than I expected. Much lower. I scrolled through the recent transactions, my heart starting to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There were the usual charges. The mortgage payment, the utility bills, my grocery store purchases. And then I saw it. A single large transaction from that very morning. A transfer. $5,000. Moved from our joint account to a different account. An account I did not recognize at first, but the name beside it was clear. Carol. The memo line for the transfer contained just 4 words. Christmas bonus for Mom. I stared at the screen, the numbers and letters blurring in front of my eyes. $5,000. It was a huge sum of money. It was half of my savings, half of Mark's. It was our emergency fund, the money we had been carefully setting aside for a down payment on a bigger house one day. And he had just given it to his mother, without asking me, without even telling me. He had stolen from me. He had stolen from us. Suddenly, everything made a terrifying kind of sense. The padlock was not just about cruelty. It was a strategic move. They had taken a massive amount of money from our shared resources, money that I had earned, and they did not want me to partake in the feast that, in their twisted logic, they had paid for with my own stolen funds. The cruelty was a distraction. The humiliation was a cover for theft. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This was not just a bad marriage. This was a conspiracy. My husband and my mother-in-law had conspired to steal from me. I looked up from my phone. Mark was laughing at something Mr. Henderson had said. He looked like the perfect husband, the perfect employee, the perfect man. A pillar of the community. And he was a thief. His mother, standing by the fireplace with a proprietary air, was his accomplice. The anger that had been simmering inside me all evening now roared into a blazing inferno. The hurt, the shame, the sadness, it all burned away, leaving behind a core of cold, hard fury. This was not just about a locked fridge anymore. This was about justice. I took a screenshot of the transaction. I sent it to Jessica with a simple message. Look at this. He stole our savings and gave it to her this morning. My phone buzzed a second later. Her reply was just as simple. Burn him to the ground. I took a deep, steadying breath. Jessica was right. But a public screaming match would only make me look unstable. It would play right into their hands. Mark would call me hysterical. Carol would call me crazy. I had to be smarter than that. I had to be more calculating. I had to use their own weapon, the importance of appearances, against them. Mr. Henderson was the key. His presence here was not a disaster. It was a gift from the universe. He was a man who valued image, reputation, and, as he was so fond of saying, family values. I looked at him, then at Mark, then at the screenshot on my phone. The plan began to form in my mind, piece by piece. It was a risky plan, a terrifying one, but it was the only way. The conversation had shifted. Mr. Henderson was now talking about a new initiative at the company. "We are creating a new senior position," he announced to the room. "Head of Family and Community Outreach. It is a big role. It will be the public face of our corporate responsibility program. We need someone with impeccable character, someone who truly embodies family values." He looked directly at Mark as he said this. "I have had my eye on you for this role, Mark. You are a family man. You have a good head on your shoulders. I think you could be the perfect fit." Mark's face lit up. This was it. This was the big promotion he had been dreaming of. His eyes were shining with ambition and greed. He looked like he had just won the lottery. "Sir, I am speechless," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That would be an incredible honor. I take family values very seriously. Nothing is more important to me than family." His hypocrisy was so profound, so absolute, that it was almost breathtaking. He said this with a straight face, knowing he had stolen from his wife that very morning, knowing he had locked her out of her own home. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The moment had arrived. It was time. I stood up. All eyes in the room turned to me. Mark's expression faltered, a flicker of apprehension crossing his face. "Mr. Henderson," I began, my voice clear and steady. "I am so glad you brought that up, because I have a question about family values. A question for my husband." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The festive cheer evaporated, replaced by a tense, heavy silence. The children had been taken to the playroom by Linda, so it was just the adults. "Sarah, not now," Mark said, his voice a low warning. He tried to shoot me a look that was meant to be intimidating, but it just looked desperate. I ignored him completely. I kept my eyes fixed on Mr. Henderson, but my words were for Mark. "Mark," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even me. "Could you please explain to your boss, the man who is considering you for a role based on family values, the specific family value that involves putting a padlock on a refrigerator on Christmas Eve to prevent your wife from eating?" My heart is pounding in my chest. This is it. There is no going back. A collective gasp went through the room. Mrs. Henderson's hand flew to her mouth. Linda looked at me, then at her brother, her face pale with shock. Tom's jaw was on the floor. Mr. Henderson's jovial expression had vanished, replaced by a look of stone-cold disbelief. He turned his head slowly to look at Mark. Mark was frozen. The color drained from his face. He looked like a cornered animal. What? She is exaggerating," he stammered, his eyes wide with panic. "Am I?" I asked, taking a step forward. "Am I exaggerating about this?" Carol lunged forward. "She is a liar," she shrieked, her voice shrill and ugly. "She's hysterical. She is making it all up to get attention." "A liar?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the screenshot of the bank transfer. "Then maybe you can explain this. This is a $5,000 transfer from our joint savings account to your bank account, Carol. It was made this morning. The memo says, 'Christmas bonus for Mom.'" I let the words hang in the air for a moment. I turned my gaze back to Mr. Henderson, who was now staring at the phone in my hand. "I am the frugal wife, remember?" I said, my voice laced with ice. "The one who supposedly did not buy enough food. The truth is, my husband and his mother stole $5,000 of my money this morning. And then they locked me out of the kitchen. So I could not eat the food that I bought. The food they thought they had paid for with my own stolen savings. I looked directly at Mark. His entire body was trembling. "So, Mark," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "tell me again about your family values." The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the Christmas lights on the tree. Everyone was staring at Mark and Carol, waiting for their response. Mr. Henderson slowly stood up. He was a tall man, and his presence filled the room. He looked from the phone in my hand to Mark's ashen face and then to Carol, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. "Mark," Mr. Henderson said, his voice low and devoid of all its earlier warmth. "Is this true?" Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stood there, gaping like a fish. "It is a misunderstanding," he finally choked out. "A terrible misunderstanding. She agreed to the gift for my mother." "I did not agree to it," I said calmly. "When did I agree to it, Mark? Was it before or after you told me I was not part of your real family?" He flinched as if I had struck him. He had no answer. He just stared at me with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Carol, seeing her son floundering, decided to double down. It was a fatal mistake. "She has never been good enough for him," she spat, her face twisted in an ugly sneer. "She is not family. She is just a gold digger who trapped my son." "A gold digger?" I asked, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. "I am the one who just had $5,000 stolen from her." "Who exactly is the gold digger in this situation, Carol?" Linda, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. "Mother, stop," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Just stop." But it was too late. The damage was done. The truth in all its ugliness was laid bare for everyone to see. Mr. Henderson looked at Carol with an expression of utter disgust. Then he turned his cold, hard gaze back to Mark. "I see," he said, his voice like chips of ice. "The family values are becoming very clear now." He walked over to me and looked at the phone screen himself. He read the transaction details, his jaw tightening with every word. He then looked back at Mark. "You are right, Mark," he said. "I am speechless. I have been in business for 30 years. I have seen a lot of things, but I have never ever encountered something so despicable." He shook his head slowly, a look of profound disappointment on his face. "The head of family and community outreach. What a joke. You are not fit to represent this company in any capacity. You are a thief and a bully." Mark seemed to shrink under his boss's gaze. "Mr. Henderson, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I can explain. It was my mother's idea. Do not try to blame your mother." Mr. Henderson cut him off sharply. "You are a grown man. You made your choice. You chose to humiliate and steal from your wife on Christmas Eve. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." He turned to his wife. "Mary, we are leaving." "Of course, dear," she said. She walked over to me and gently touched my arm. "I am so sorry, Sarah," she whispered, her eyes full of sympathy. "You are a strong woman. Do not let them break you." I just nodded, unable to speak. Mr. Henderson paused at the door. He looked back at Mark one last time. "We will be having a meeting on Monday morning, Mark, in my office, with Human Resources. I suggest you spend the weekend thinking about your future, or lack thereof at my company." With that, he and his wife walked out, closing the door softly behind them. The silence they left behind was heavier, more suffocating than before. It was the silence of utter ruin. Mark, Carol, Linda, and Tom were all frozen in a tableau of horror. Mark was the first to move. He turned to me, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "You," he hissed. "You did this. You ruined my life." "No, Mark," I said, my voice finally finding its strength. "You did this. You and your mother. This is the consequence of your actions. You built this prison, not me." Carol started sobbing, loud, theatrical sobs. My son's career, his future. You have destroyed it, she wailed, pointing a trembling finger at me. Linda rushed to her mother's side, trying to comfort her, but her eyes were on me. They held a look I had never seen from her before, a mixture of shock, pity, and a dawning, horrified respect. I did not want to be there for the aftermath. I did not want to hear their accusations or their fake tears. I had done what I needed to do. The truth was out. I turned my back on them. I turned my back on my husband, my mother-in-law, and the entire pathetic drama they had created. I walked calmly up the stairs, each step feeling lighter than the last. I went into our bedroom, my bedroom, and opened the closet. I pulled down my suitcase from the top shelf. It landed on the floor with a soft, satisfying thud. I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs behind me. Mark burst into the room, his face red and blotchy. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice panicked. "Where are you going? You cannot leave." I did not look at him. I opened the latches on the suitcase. I went to my dresser and pulled open the top drawer. I took out a stack of sweaters and began to place them neatly inside. "You cannot just walk out," he yelled. "This is our home. We have to talk about this." "There is nothing to talk about, Mark," I said, my voice even. "You said it yourself. This is a house for your real family. I am just a guest here, and my visit is over." "Sarah, please," he begged, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. "I am sorry, okay? I am sorry. It was a stupid, horrible thing to do. I was wrong. Do not leave me." His apology was as hollow as he was. It was not born of remorse, but of fear. He was not sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. He was sorry he was about to lose his job. He was sorry his perfect life was crumbling around him. "Your sorrow is about 10 hours and $5,000 too late," I said, closing the dresser drawer and moving to the next one. I took out my jeans, my t-shirts, my underwear. I folded everything with a strange, methodical calm. He grabbed my arm. "I love you," he said, his voice cracking. "Do not do this." I stopped what I was doing and finally looked at him. I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of the man I had once loved. I found nothing. There was only a weak, frightened stranger staring back at me. "No, you do not," I said, my voice soft but firm. "You do not love me. You do not even respect me. Love does not put a padlock on a refrigerator. Love does not steal. Love does not stand by while your mother calls your wife a gold digger. I do not know what you feel for me, Mark, but it is not love, and I am done pretending that it is." I pulled my arm from his grasp. He stumbled back, his face crumpling in defeat. He knew it was over. He had lost. I finished packing my bag. It did not take long. I did not have that much to take. Most of my life was tied up in this house, in this marriage. But the things that truly mattered, my dignity, my self-respect, I was taking those with me. I zipped the suitcase, I lifted it off the bed and walked toward the door. Mark just stood there watching me, his shoulders slumped. Downstairs, I could hear Carol still crying and Linda trying to shush her. I did not say goodbye. There were no more words to be said. I walked down the stairs, past the living room where my perfectly arranged appetizers were still sitting on the coffee table. I walked past the beautiful Christmas tree I had so lovingly decorated. None of it felt like mine anymore. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold Christmas Eve air. It felt clean. It felt fresh. It felt free. I pulled out my phone and called Jessica. "It is done," I said, my voice steady. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I am better than okay," I said, and a real, genuine smile spread across my face for the first time that day. "I am free. Can I still come over?" "My door is already open," she said. "Come home, Sarah." And so I did. I walked away from the house with the padlock and the lies, and I did not look back. I drove to my friend's house, a small apartment filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of gingerbread cookies. When I walked in, Jessica hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. Her family welcomed me without question, pulling up an extra chair at their table and handing me a glass of wine. That night, for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I was part of a real family. A family built on love and respect, not on control and cruelty. The next morning, on Christmas Day, I woke up to a series of missed calls and frantic text messages from Mark. I did not read them. I just deleted them. Then there was a voicemail. Curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to it. It was him, his voice a broken, sobbing mess. Sarah, I got an email this morning from HR. They fired me, effective immediately. Mr. Henderson fired me on Christmas Day. My career is over. Everything is over. Please, you have to come back. We can fix this. I need you. I deleted the voicemail. A small, cold part of me felt a grim satisfaction. He had not said he was sorry for hurting me. He had said he needed me to fix it. He still did not get it. He probably never would. Later that day, I got a text from a number I did not recognize at first. It was Linda. Sarah, I am so sorry for everything. The message read, I had no idea it was that bad. My mother and Mark, they are wrong. What they did to you was unforgivable. I should have stood up for you years ago. I was a coward. I hope one day you can forgive me. I am on your side. I stared at the message for a long time. It was the first crack in the family facade. Linda had seen the truth, and it had horrified her. I texted her back a simple, "Thank you, Linda. That means a lot." Maybe there was hope for her, but my journey with that family was over. The day after Christmas, I called a lawyer. I told her the whole story, from the years of emotional manipulation to the padlock and the $5,000 theft. She was sharp, efficient, and deeply sympathetic. This is not just a divorce case, she told me, her voice firm. This is a case of financial malfeasance and emotional distress. We are going to get you everything you are entitled to, and then some. The legal process was long and draining, but my lawyer was a shark. Mark, without his high-paying job and with a reputation now in tatters, had no fight left in him. He was represented by a cheap, ineffective lawyer who was clearly outmatched. Carol tried to intervene, calling my lawyer and my office, trying to spread lies about me. But it was too late. No one believed her anymore. Her credibility was shot. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. The judge was appalled by the details of the case, particularly the padlock incident and the documented theft. I was awarded a significant portion of our marital assets. The judge made a specific point of ordering that the $5,000 that had been transferred to Carol's account be returned to me, with interest. He also ordered Mark to pay for my legal fees. The house was sold. Mark, unemployed and with a black mark on his professional record, had to move in with his mother. I heard through Linda that their relationship, once so codependent and toxic, had completely soured. They blamed each other for the disaster. Their house was no longer a fortress of family pride, but a prison of their own making, filled with resentment and regret. As for me, I used the settlement money to get a fresh start. I found a small, sunny apartment in a new neighborhood far away from my old life. It was all mine. The first thing I bought for it was a brand new refrigerator. I filled it to the brim with my favorite foods. Sometimes, just for the sheer joy of it, I would open the door and just look at the abundance inside, a symbol of my freedom. One evening, about a year after that fateful Christmas Eve, I was in my kitchen, cooking dinner for myself. Jessica was coming over later. I was trying a new, complicated recipe, and the room was filled with the delicious smells of garlic and herbs. My phone rang. It was Linda. We had kept in touch. Our conversations infrequent but always warm. She had separated herself from her mother and brother, focusing on her own family and trying to build a healthier life. "Hey," she said. "Just wanted to see how you were doing." "I am doing great, Linda," I said, and I meant it. "Really great. How are things with you?" We chatted for a few minutes about her kids, her job. Then there was a pause. "I saw him today," she said quietly. "Mark. He was working at a coffee shop downtown. As a barista." I did not know what to say to that. The image of the proud, arrogant man I had married, the man who had thought he was destined for greatness, now serving coffee to strangers, was a stark one. "He looked small," Linda continued, "and tired. Mom is driving him crazy. He lost everything, Sarah. And he knows it was his own fault." He told me that. He said the worst part is knowing he had a good wife and he threw it all away for nothing. "I am sorry to hear that," I said, and I found that I was. Not sorry for him in a way that made me want to help him, but sorry in a distant, detached way. Sorry for the waste of a life. Sorry for the man he could have been if he had not been so poisoned by his mother's bitterness and his own weakness. "Do not be," Linda said firmly. "He got what he deserved. You got what you deserved too. Happiness." After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time thinking. I thought about the padlock. I thought about the rage and the humiliation I had felt. And I thought about the strength I had found in that moment of crisis. They had tried to make me feel small. They had tried to lock me out, to erase me, to tell me I was nothing. But in doing so, they had only revealed their own smallness, their own emptiness. They had handed me the key to my own freedom. The timer on my oven beeped, pulling me from my thoughts. Dinner was ready. I opened the oven door, and a wave of warmth and delicious aroma washed over me. Jessica would be here any minute. My fridge was full. My heart was full. My life was my own. I had stopped giving warnings. I had stopped trying to keep a peace that was never real. And in the end, they were the ones who finally learned what it feels like to be locked out. They finally learned what it feels like to be small. And I was finally free. The years of quiet suffering, of biting my tongue and forcing smiles, had culminated in a single explosive moment of truth. It was a terrifying thing to do. To stand up in a room full of people and expose the ugly reality of my marriage. But the alternative, to continue living a lie, to let them chip away at my soul piece by piece, was far more terrifying. The aftermath was messy, as all demolitions are. Mark's begging did not stop with that one voicemail. For weeks, my phone was a constant barrage of his pleading. He sent long, rambling emails in the middle of the night. He left tearful messages. He even showed up at Jessica's apartment once, looking disheveled and desperate. Jessica, ever my protector, threatened to call the police, and he had scurried away. His apologies were always centered on himself. His lost job, his ruined reputation, his misery. He was sorry for the consequences he was facing, not for the pain he had caused me. Carol was a different kind of problem. She tried to launch a smear campaign. She called distant relatives of mine, people I had not spoken to in years, to tell them what a horrible, vindictive person I was. She posted vague, passive-aggressive statuses on social media about ungrateful snakes who destroy families. It was all so transparently pathetic that it mostly just garnered her pity and scorn. Linda told me that many of their own family friends had started to distance themselves from Carol after word got out about what had really happened. Her social standing, which she valued so highly, had crumbled. My own family, my parents and my sister, were horrified when I finally told them the full extent of what I had been enduring. "Why did you not tell us?" my mother had asked, her voice filled with pain. "We would have helped you." I explained that I had been ashamed. I had felt like a failure. I had wanted to solve my own problems. They understood, but they made me promise to never hide my struggles from them again. Their unwavering support was a balm on my wounded spirit. The legal battle was where the real fight happened. Mark and Carol, cornered and desperate, tried to lie in the depositions. Mark claimed the $5,000 was a loan, not a gift. Carol claimed I was mentally unstable and prone to fits of fantasy. But my lawyer was brilliant. She had the screenshot. She had the text messages. And she had a surprise witness, Linda. Linda's testimony was the final nail in their coffin. She sat in the lawyer's office, her voice quiet but firm, and recounted years of her mother's subtle and not so subtle campaign to undermine my marriage. She talked about the constant criticism, the exclusion, the way Carol would praise Mark for things I had done. She confirmed that she had heard Mark and Carol conspiring in the kitchen on Christmas Eve. She confirmed that the padlock was real, and that the reason given to the Hendersons was a lie. When she was done, there was a heavy silence in the room. Mark would not look at his sister. Carol was staring at her with a look of utter betrayal. In that moment, Carol lost not just her son's marriage and reputation, but her daughter's respect as well. The family unit she had fought so viciously to protect was now irrevocably broken, shattered by her own hand. After the divorce was settled, I made a conscious effort to rebuild my life, not just financially, but emotionally. I went to therapy. I talked through the years of gaslighting and emotional abuse. I learned to recognize the red flags I had ignored for so long. I learned to trust my own instincts again. I learned that my feelings were valid, that I was not too sensitive. I was appropriately sensitive to cruelty. I reconnected with old friends I had drifted away from during my marriage. Friends Mark had subtly discouraged me from seeing because he found them too loud or too independent. I realized he had been isolating me, slowly cutting me off from my support system so that he and his mother could have more control. Rebuilding those friendships was like letting sunlight into a dark room. Jessica remained my rock. We spent countless nights talking, laughing, and sometimes crying. She helped me pack up the last of my things from the storage unit where they had been kept after the house was sold. As we sorted through boxes of old photos and mementos from my marriage, I found I could look at them without pain. They were just objects, relics from a past life that no longer had any power over me. "You know," Jessica said one day as we were having coffee in my new apartment, "I was so angry at him, for so long, but now I just feel sorry for him." "I know what you mean," I replied, stirring my coffee. He had a choice. Every single day he had a choice to be a partner, to be a husband, and he chose to be a son. He chose his mother's toxicity over our future. "And look where it got him," she said. Living in her house, under her thumb, probably still getting criticized for loading the dishwasher wrong. It is a life sentence. It was true. Linda had told me that Carol treated Mark like a disappointment. His failure to hold on to his prestigious job and his perfect wife was a constant source of shame for her. The adoring son and the proud mother were gone, replaced by two bitter, resentful people trapped in a house together. One of the most healing things I did was to host my own Christmas Eve dinner the following year. I invited my parents, my sister, Jessica and her family, and even Linda and her husband and kids. Linda was hesitant at first, feeling guilty about intruding on my new life. But I insisted. "You are my family now, too," I told her. "The real kind." My small apartment was crowded and full of noise and laughter. I cooked a huge feast. All my favorite things. My fridge was so full it could barely close, and the sight of it made me smile. There were no padlocks here, only open doors and open hearts. At one point in the evening, Linda pulled me aside into the kitchen. Her eyes were teary. "Thank you for this, Sarah," she said, "for showing me what a family is supposed to look like, forgiving me." "There is nothing to forgive," I said, giving her a hug. "You were brave. You told the truth when it mattered most." We stood there for a moment, two women who had been on opposite sides of a painful war, now standing together as allies, as friends. It was a testament to the fact that you can choose your family. Life moved on. I excelled at my job. I got a promotion of my own. I traveled. I adopted a cat. I learned to be happy on my own, to find fulfillment within myself rather than seeking it from someone else's approval. I did not date for a long time. I was not interested. I was enjoying my own company too much. But eventually, I met someone. His name was David. He was kind, funny, and respectful. He listened when I talked. He celebrated my successes. And when he met my family, he treated them with warmth and genuine affection. The first time I introduced him to my parents, my dad pulled me aside later. "He is a good man, sweetheart," he said, his eyes shining. "He looks at you like you are the whole world." One of the biggest tests came when I introduced him to Jessica. She was fiercely protective of me, and I knew her approval would mean everything. She grilled him for an hour, asking him about his job, his family, his past relationships. He answered every question with patience and honesty. At the end of it, she gave him a firm nod. "Okay," she said. "You pass. For now. But if you ever hurt her, I have a shovel and I know how to use it." David just laughed and said, "I would never dream of it." The day David asked me to move in with him, I felt a flicker of fear. The idea of sharing a home, a life, with someone again was daunting. I told him about my past, about Mark and the padlock. I did not want any secrets between us. He listened patiently, his expression growing more and more serious. When I was finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he took my hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of emotion, "what they did to you was monstrous. I am so sorry you had to go through that. But your past does not define you. It made you the strong, incredible woman you are today. I would be honored to share a home with you. And I promise you, our home will only ever be a place of love, safety, and respect. And the only lock will be on the front door, to keep the world out, not to keep you in." His words washed away the last of my fears. I knew then that I could trust him. I could build a future with him. We moved into a beautiful new house together. It had a big kitchen with a huge stainless steel refrigerator. The day we moved in, David came home with a small wrapped gift. I opened it. It was a silly, decorative magnet for the fridge. It was a picture of a cartoon cat, and it said, "Home is where the food is." I laughed until tears streamed down my face. It was such a small, simple thing, but it meant the world. It was a symbol of how far I had come, from a locked fridge to a home filled with love and laughter. I never saw Mark again. I never wanted to. His chapter was closed. My story was still being written, and it was a happy one. I had faced the darkest parts of my life and had come out the other side, stronger and more whole than I had ever been before. The memory of that Christmas Eve would always be with me, a scar on my past. But it was no longer a source of pain. It was a reminder of my own strength, a reminder that no lock is strong enough to keep a determined woman from her own life, and a reminder that sometimes the most wonderful gifts do not come wrapped in a bow. Sometimes they come in the form of an unexpected knock on the door, a knock that changes everything. They come in the form of a crisis that reveals the truth and sets you free. They had tried to break me, but all they had done was show me how to be unbreakable.